And we are back in the building once again. The Big Three show, minus one though. Once again, man like Chino, big up to yourself. He's out with the family right now. You know what I'm saying? Hope you're enjoying that special time with the family. But I got man like CM in the building once again. We've got a lot to talk about. NBA playoffs have moved into conference semi-final stages. There's some breaking news that are coming out thick and fast over this last day or so. There's some news to react to from earlier on in the week and last week as well. So make sure you stay tuned to all the discussions on that. Man like CM, what are you saying, bro? How are you feeling? How's your week been so far?
Good week, good second round hoops. We're seeing teams on both ends of the spectrum, West and East, show out. Some teams need to make some improvements, some adjustments heading into these crucial game two fixtures. So big ups everybody inside. Make sure you're hitting the like on the video, subscribing if you're new, sharing to your friends and frenemies, clicking the bell. Pros Only Sports, man. Let's get into this stuff.
Yes, that's what we gotta do. But there's only one place to start, man. Some interesting breaking news. Literally broke in the last half an hour. Frank Vogel, and look, I've even shocked CM about this. Frank Vogel has been fired as the head coach of the Phoenix Suns. Big news coming out of Phoenix there. And I'll read the statement so that everyone who comes in and joins will know what's going on. And if you watch it later, you'll also know what's going on. So the Phoenix Suns announced today that the team has dismissed Frank Vogel as head coach. As we said at the press conference on May 1st, team leadership, including myself, Josh Bartelstein, and ownership will be looking across basketball operations to determine what changes needed to be made, said the Suns' general president of basketball operations and general manager, James Jones. After a thoughtful review of the season, we concluded that we needed a different head coach for our team. We appreciate Frank's hard work and commitment. We're here to win a championship, and last season was way below our expectations. We will continue to evaluate our operation and make the necessary changes to reach our championship caliber goals. We will all take accountability, and it is my job, along with Josh and ownership, to build a championship team. Wow. Now, there's going to be a wider discussion, especially when we go into the next topic, surrounding the situations with head coaches being fired when the players themselves are not the ones, performing on the court, or the front office not constructing a team that will complement that head coach that they brought in. So, bro, based on this announcement, there's a shock to you because this is breaking news to you, right? What's your first thoughts on Frank Vogel being out of the Suns?
I think the Phoenix Suns, their hierarchy are lacking accountability. They are lacking accountability for their own faults because when you bring in a coach in Frank Vogel, he's defensive minded, and you constructed a roster that ultimately struggled defensively throughout the regular season and in that first round playoff series. So, you come here, you speak about severely underachieving. I think, what was it? What was their record this season? Was it 49-33? So they had a topsy-turvy regular season, couldn't quite get it together with all the injuries, and that's one side of things, the injuries that affected the continuity for that team. But ultimately, I think even if they had everybody fit, they wouldn't have been one of the best defensive sides in the league. Mm-hmm. So the team that you constructed was counterproductive to the coaching methods, the beliefs of Frank Vogel and his coaching staff. So, look, we'll have to wait and see what kind of coach they bring in next. But I don't see that making a massive change if the team remains the same. The team that they've constructed out there in Phoenix remains the same. They're still going to have to try and find a way to keep those three guys on the court, get the best out of those three guys, and allow them to buy in on both ends of the floor, which, when you consider the burden of a KD, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker has on the offensive end, they will take possessions up. We've praised KD for the intensity and the skill that he brings on both ends of the floor. But we saw that didn't quite translate to the rest of the roster. You can have a Nurkic who will try and hustle to get those rebounds. You can have other guys around you. But ultimately, if the team isn't constructed in a way where 1 through 5, and then the guys that come off the bench are injecting a sense of energy, a urgency on the defensive end, you're not gonna be a winning team ultimately. And I think for me, overall, just hearing that statement, hearing the statements that they had in the exit interview, I just feel like as a whole, the Phoenix Suns as an organization are lacking accountability for the errors that they made in the initial stages of building this big three and almost removing everything they had in terms of long-term building, draft picks, and so forth. So, look, I was shocked when I heard it because I wasn't really expecting Frank Vogel or a coach to be fired, especially in Phoenix, because I'm like, who else is out there that is really going to transform the fortunes? I guess you could say maybe they give a chance to a coach that's been, for example, Charlotte. They've just hired a new first year head coach. It will be his first year, and he's been a kind of assistant for many years. I think 12 seasons in the NBA. Congratulations to him. Maybe they'll give a chance for a first year head coach. But even then, you're putting a lot of pressure on a guy to be able to perform with 3 stars in Bradley Beal, who you can't move, Kevin Durant, who's on borrowed time, still one of the top stars in the league, but for how long? And Devin Booker, who ultimately is one of the best guys. He's soon to be entering his prime. He's one of those guys that really is expected to win from here on out in his career. And they had those years where the previously constructed roster with CP, Bridges, Cam Johnson, they won their 60 games. We know how their playoff runs ended with Monty Williams. Now you've got a completely different side with Frank Vogel, first season, and now you've chopped him completely. And it looks like you've tried to throw all of the blame on Frank Vogel as to why you failed in the regular season and you failed in the playoffs, didn't get out of the first round. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
I hear it, bro. Like the thing that statement for me just kind of look. It's like it's a bit delusional to a sense, right? To be able to come out and say, we want to play championship caliber basketball, but you had a championship head coach. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't make sense. Because then the market now, when you go out to the market, who out there can you bring in right now that's going to deliver you a championship? There's only one name I can give you, is Bud. Mike Budenholzer has won a championship, playing a defensive style of basketball, very intensive or extensive defensive style of basketball. And like you said, you have to get that roster to buy in. The roster has to change dramatically to fit what he needs to complement the skill set that he has as a coach, right? Now, there's a caveat here, right? I don't know how they move forward because somebody out of that 3 can't remain. Because we saw at times this year, I think this year, KD had the highest percentage of shots in the corner in his whole career at 35. When was he ever a catch and shoot 3-point shooter? Like when?
And there were like reports, whether they're true or not, basically saying that he wasn't happy with those factors in him being essentially rendered a spot up shooter in the corner in crucial moments of their offense.
So you look at that and you're just saying to yourself, like, I do understand there'll be some blame on the coach because ultimately you can't have situations where arguably your best player out of the 3 is, like you said, a spot up shooter in the corner shooting threes, right? Somebody who this year has overcome some injury issues and he's probably put out his best year in the last 2-3 years, let's say maybe. You brought in a Bradley Beal who's been injured for most of the season. We don't know if he's ever going to get back to his best because the amount of injuries he's suffered over the last 3 or 4 years has definitely put some wear and tear on his body. Devin Booker is in a I think, at a crossroads in his career at this point, because you've gone from the highs of, potentially becoming an NBA champion, the roster, being reconstructed around you, because essentially you are the mainstay of that team. You're the main guy in that team. It's your franchise, essentially. They drafted you, and like, he's at a crossroads now, like, because does he trust in his organization to be able to build a team to help him win? Or if that can't be the case, does he have to look elsewhere? Where does he go? I don't know. Like, because he's in the middle of a supermax deal or max deal. I don't know which one it is. He signed that a couple years ago, I believe. So where does he go? Like, so the Suns are in a very weird place. That roster in itself, like, there's some, they've paid Grayson Allen, so he's locked in. And like you said last week, I think Royce O'Neal's a free agent. I believe who else is supposed to be a free agent from that roster?
Check again.
I know Royce O'Neal is a free agent. They need him. Like, that one, you just can't. Like, if you let him go somewhere, it's crazy. But then, like, the likes of Bobo and Eric Gordon, and there's some guys there. Like, I'm just like, some of them you don't even need. I think Nasir Little is there. It's gonna be tough for them to get out of this situation, and I don't know where they go next. Do they go Darvin Ham? I don't know, because he's available, and that's the next topic we're gonna speak on. But let's get your last thoughts on this. What do you think is gonna happen from here on out? Because the way the organization are speaking, they're committed to that big three. They're committed to making it work because they bet the house on it. Essentially, they bet their whole house, the mortgage, the car. They bet the kids on this.
They have to. There's nothing else they can do, like you said. But ultimately, I think Frank Vogel's a decent coach. And I just don't like the fact that they've placed the burden, most of the burden on him. They haven't put any responsibility on the players. And they've also thrown a lot of the blame of their failures this season on Frank Vogel, who ultimately is the fool guy, is the guy exiting, is the guy being sacked from the Phoenix organization. So, look, my expectations are extremely low for that roster, healthy or not, based off of what we've been able to see. I guess they'll have to prove everybody wrong, but it will be an uphill battle. Once again, we saw how competitive this Western Conference is. Even in this playoffs right now, we understand how competitive these Western Conference teams are becoming. And even the younger ones, there are still more to rise if they make the right moves. So it's only going to get more difficult for Phoenix, and they have championship aspirations. So when you can't make significant changes, but you need significant change in regards to your fortunes, something's not adding up here. Something's going to have to give. And, you mentioned Devin Booker being at a crossroads. I don't see Phoenix wanting to trade him. I don't see Phoenix trading Kevin Durant based off of their comments thus far, because you had, I think it was James Jones who came out and said, nobody's ever maximized Kevin Durant's skill set. This season, you didn't do a great job of trying to maximize his skill set, but you're confident that you still will be. And I think maybe those were the signs where he was hinting Frank Vogel he's a dead man walking.
Yeah.
And now he is.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have to speak to sometimes these front offices not actually looking at these squads these squads of players properly, because when you look at the mistakes that the previous ownerships in their conference have made, one very recently in Los Angeles with them pairing Westbrook with AD and LeBron, that was a failure. It just hadn't, and the thing about it is it was with the same coach that you have now just fired. Like,
and what was their identity? Defense.
it
and
was
then
crazy.
they took a sharp left turn away from that.
And then when you look at, like, even from a certain perspective, like looking at the way the game is going now with very big, athletic, lengthy teams, right? And they're explosive too. You have to be trying to trend on that line. Like if you're not building your rosters to trend on those types of lines, you're always going to be left behind. Your squad has to be young or youngish. You can have some experience around. Like KD should be in there as an efficient scorer, surrounded with a mixture of young guys, explosive guys that can mask some of the deficiencies in his game from a defensive capability. For example, you need length in there to help him at points, but they've just not constructed it properly at all. And it's obviously difficult. Don't get me wrong. It is very difficult to get it because players are at teams where, they have a very good future, and you have to go and pick. You're gonna have to try and pick your way through the league and see who's got potential that could come into your team and shine alongside a KD who's looking for a championship. It's a very difficult thing, but it can be done. Ultimately, Frank Vogel out. I wonder who's going to be the replacement there, but we're going to move over to...
Good luck. Good luck.
Trust me. We're going to move over to this one. So this one dropped obviously late last week, obviously after the Lakers went out. Well, it was a little while ago they went out of the playoffs, but Darvin Ham was fired as the Lakers head coach. And the narrative now being spun is that people are upset with this because they don't feel it's Darvin Ham's responsibility for why the Lakers have failed in 2 postseasons now. One citing the fact that last season, before the trade deadline, they were a team that basically weren't going to even make the playoffs. To be able to become an 8th seed and go all the way to Western Conference Finals to get swept by Denver is something that they should kind of say that's a highlight of his time as a Lakers coach, because it's something very difficult to achieve. And then as for this year, having a better record than last year overall, when you talk about the regular season, to unfortunately run into their nemesis again, and they get a gentleman's sweep in the playoffs in the first round. And then when you now look at what the Timberwolves are doing to Denver currently, and we don't know how that's going to end, but right now it's looking a bit shaky. Right now, it's looking very, very shaky going into those 2 home games with the Timberwolves, and there could be potential situation going on there, a couple of sweeps, I don't know. But they're looking at that now, sitting in Cancun at home. LeBron is swishing wine, in his wine glass, and talking to JJ Redick on a podcast. Like, what do you think is like? I mean, do you think that the firing is deserved first and foremost, and then where do the Lakers go forward from here? Like, who's going to be the head coach? Because there's pressure. That's a franchise that there's constant pressure, and with someone like LeBron who obviously has aspirations to win another championship ring. What do you think? What do you think about all of that?
I think the writing was on the wall for Darvin Ham. I think just being the Lakers head coach, there's a lot of pressure that comes with it. And I think this was his first head coaching job in the NBA. So that alone is a massive amount of pressure to coach LeBron James. We all know the coaches in the past who have coached LeBron James. Some have struggled, some have thrived. But ultimately, I think the writing was on the wall with the Laker fans. You could see sometimes certain reactions from the players. They just weren't responsive from time to time. For in terms of his coaching methods, some of the mistakes that he's made in the regular season, in the playoffs, he was questioned. He was heavily scrutinized. Now, I will say that the Los Angeles Lakers are another organization who potentially lack a little bit of accountability and are confused because you make your moves, and I was the first one to hold up my hands and say I overestimated how positive their offseason was. But with hindsight now, I can look back at it and say I can say, especially with the quality and every other Western Conference team we've seen, I can say that the Lakers are just a confused team. They're not terrible. They're not great either. They're just in the middle of the pack. But somehow, because they are the Los Angeles Lakers, they will always want to fight for a championship because they have LeBron James, because they have Anthony Davis. Those guys have already delivered a championship a few years ago now, 2020, 4 years ago. So The expectation that LeBron James is going to have is that he wants to get to the playoffs and he wants to compete in the playoffs, get to the latter stages in conference finals, NBA finals, and whatever happens there happens. You're still competing for a championship. But the construction of their roster, unfortunately, hasn't been good enough to be able to help out an aging LeBron James who can still produce at a high level, but isn't going to be able to carry a team like, for example, 2018 Cavaliers, who didn't have players of the ability all around required to be a top tier championship team, but they had a supernova LeBron James that was able to guide that team and navigate through the Eastern Conference and get to the NBA Finals where they had those matchups with the Golden State Warriors. We all know what happened there. But Anthony Davis, I think he's a great player, but again, he hasn't really shown in his career that he can backpack a team and carry them to victory after victory after victory. There are times where you can take him out of his game, slow him down somewhat, and that works to the detriment of the Los Angeles Lakers. D'Angelo Russell, mixed performances in the playoffs. Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, those were the guys who really shined in that run to the conference finals, weren't really able to put it together on a consistent basis. You bring in Gabe Vincent, he's hardly available during the regular season. Who's the other guy as well? Jared Vanderbilt. Crucial defensive piece for them last year, even though at times he was in and out of the rotation because of his offensive deficiencies. He's injured for the majority of the season, so you're not getting his production in any way where they probably would have needed him against Denver.
Yep.
So the team that they've constructed is a decent team, but it's not good enough to compete in a highly competitive conference like it was last year, like it was this year. And unfortunately for them, they go into the play and they compete against this Denver side. They get one game on them, but ultimately, when you look back at these games, they're leading in each and every one of these fixtures, and Denver find a way to get back. We're seeing in round two some of Denver's deficiencies, which the Lakers couldn't take advantage of. The Minnesota Timberwolves are
exposing them.
And ultimately, when you think about the injuries to Jamal Murray and how he was able to virtually come out on a hobbled leg and still hit 2 game winners, put away the Lakers multiple times, Jokic doing what he does, Michael Porter Jr. shooting lights out, KCP, need I speak about the rest? The Lakers were just simply not good enough to compete with this Denver side, even with missing guys in comparison to last year's matchup in the conference finals when you look at your Bruce Browns and co. So it feels like every year we say there's a big job to do for the Lakers. So Darvin Ham's gone now. Who are you going to bring in? That's the first question, because you've got to establish the coach that you're going to go into the new season with in that off season so he can acclimatize with the squad, LeBron James, who will be maybe there, Anthony Davis and stuff like that, and work out what you're going to work on, how you're going to play in order to become a successful team and a consistent team in the regular season so that you're best equipped for the playoffs. And then you've got to work out, well, are there any off-season moves we can make? Which I'm sure that, I heard the other day they have pieces to make small maneuvers here and there in the off-season.
They got some first-round picks that they can kind of. But then this is where, and I'm sorry to cut you off, bro, but like you've just walked into a good point, where it's like, what is going to be the moves they'll make? Because we're hearing the rumors of Trae Young adding him to this. What exactly is that going to do to that team? I don't know if it's going to improve it to the standard that they think.
You know, it's interesting. I heard the other day that he actually left Clutch Sports.
Yeah.
Trae Young. So I don't know if that has anything to do with things, but obviously, there's a lot of people be saying when you're joining Clutch Sports, most likely you're looking to team up with the king.
Yeah. I mean,
does that change now?
Has that changed? I don't know. The thing about it is that them going down the route of going to get another star to add to this is just the wrong move. We know this already. I think ultimately the moves, like you said, were wrong. We look at it now. Last year's team was definitely better than this year's team on both ends of the floor. If we're being totally honest, right? This year, when you're looking at Cam Reddish, I don't know what's happened to the guy. Comes into the league, we're thinking to just he's a talented player, and he just hasn't been able to make it stick anywhere. He's coming to the Lakers. You're thinking go under the guidance of a LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and hasn't been able to make it stick. He looks a shell of himself, right? You're looking at Taurean Prince. He's had good production off the bench for the Lakers, but ultimately he's not good enough. Like Gabe Vincent, you take him out of that Miami system, he doesn't look the same player at all. He doesn't even look like he can find a shot, let alone like anything else on the defensive end of the floor, right? Chino told us this, by the way, but is what it is. I mean, Chino definitely said it, so big up to Chino for that. But like I'm just a bit like shocked at the fact that like we're gonna do this again, basically. Like another season, another off season where the Lakers are gonna have to make some moves, and if they make the wrong move, it means that their season they're gonna struggle once again. And then if they make the right move, how much of a right move is it to be able to propel them into the higher levels of the Western Conference, which it's only going to get better. It's only going to get more difficult. You have two young teams, well, one really young team and one team, I don't think they're youngish, but they've got some experience in there that are pushing for something right now. And they've got a young star that's leading them. So it's like, are you going to be able to manage with that? And obviously Dallas could potentially get better as well, because now they've got the Kyrie and Luka tandem really working in that backcourt as well. And it's just like they've added some pieces in the trade deadline. What else can they do in the offseason to really propel them? You just don't know. So it's like, in terms of Darvin Ham, I do think that the choice by the Lakers is right. I think ultimately he failed to live up to the expectation of that organization. And it's as simple as they're a championship level organization. They're looking for some, when you've got a LeBron James and Anthony Davis and the amount of money and time invested in them, and you can't win or you can't get close to winning, that's going to be an issue. If you can't command the respect of your dressing room or your locker room, that's a problem. And so like now, it's probably best to moving on. I don't think it was the right choice potentially to bring in a first year head coach with that team. You needed someone experienced that could deal with the kind of egos that, because you saw it during the season, like, and you've seen it during his tenure. We've seen Anthony Davis fighting with people on the bench. You remember last year he was fighting with people on the bench. That there's no respect to your teammates or your head coach.
Was it who was he fighting with last year?
I'm not sure. Was it Dwight Howard?
I think it was Dwight. Yeah, I think it was Dwight.
Was Dwight had a little like a spell? Was he there for like a short spell last year? Like
I don't know why, but I remember it being Dwight.
He came back for like a real short spell, if I'm not mistaken, with the Lakers. But yeah, it's a mad situation. It's a mad situation. But yeah, he had a spat with somebody, if I'm not mistaken, on the bench last year. If it's not last year, then maybe I'm bugging.
21-22. I don't know. That's when he said he was there. So.
That's when he was there. Yeah, maybe I got that wrong. But like,
and he had the spell in Philly in between. I feel like it was Dwight for some reason, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, like, look, when you don't have the respect of your colleagues, like it just becomes very problematic. And I think for him, you could see in spells, then obviously the struggles with the timeouts, his adjustments, all of these types of things. He was just a bit confusing. I feel like he'll definitely get back into the league and get another job. He just needs to find one of his level that he can kind of build upon. It might be interesting to see what happens with JB Bickerstaff after this run with the Cavs, because he's been there 5 years. They've been able to try and construct a roster that he could work with, and it's just not worked out. He might get fired. There was talks of him getting fired midway through the season when the Cavs season was kind of looking like it was going off the cliff. So you never know what could happen there. But ultimately, he's out as Lakers coach, and I'll give you the final word, bro.
One thing, is they need to light a fire under LeBron James, because as great as he is, I think we've all seen the clips at times where he looks frustrated on the court. Sometimes he doesn't get up on offense. There may be moments where he doesn't get back on defense. And those things, in terms of body language, can affect the young players, or even just the players in general that you're teammates with. I don't remember the conversation it was, but it was really the initial. I think it was after the bubble year, and I believe it was Rajon Rondo kind of speaking about how he helped LeBron James transform his body language in terms of being a better leader.
Oh yeah,
for the young guys that are on the roster. And sometimes I do see him falling into those bad habits where he'll ask the question, he'll shrug his shoulders, he'll look around and kind of place the blame on other guys from possession to possession when things aren't going well. And I think where you are right now, obviously it's frustrating to be in the position where you are, where you're not as good as you want to be. You're not where you want to be in terms of competing for championships. But a big part of being a team, being, allowing players to express themselves, to be better than they need to overperform sometimes, is to put an arm around them and to show that you trust. And a big part of that is body language. It's buying in, is showing that you trust these guys. It's not just passing to the open three and allowing him to take a crucial triple in the third and the fourth quarter to put the Lakers up or to tie a game. Sometimes it's the small little things, how you communicate with your teammates in between possessions, in training sessions, away from basketball. And I think the Lakers organization, on top of the recruitment of a coach, of players, maybe one of the biggest objectives is to light a fire under LeBron James again and tell him that he needs to be the best possible leader for whatever roster he's dealt with in LA.
Yeah.
If you want to get back to those heights again.
Yeah. I as much as like that might be a little key to get him where he needs to get to, I'm not so sure if that's going to be enough to get them back, to get that team back. I'm not so sure, But
I'm just saying, if you want to maximize what you have, then and of course, doing that, like a big part of that is putting a good team around LeBron James.
What I was gonna say is like the team has to be right. Like if the team's not right, all of that, like trying to get him to be a better leader won't really drag this team anywhere. I don't think, because I just don't think it's got the right. So like they haven't got a lot of shooting, for example. Like there's no real good shooters on that team. Like D'Lo's hit and miss. He's like, yes, this season's been a good one, but when in those crucial moments, you need someone that's consistent, and he's not. Austin Reeves, I don't need to speak. Rui Hachimura, I don't need to speak. It's very clear. Those guys aren't shooters. Like, it's clear. So it's like, unless they go back into the lab in the offseason and they dramatically improve that percentage, it's going to be another one of them kind of seasons. Because if it was me, I would have traded during the regular season. I would have traded one of them and tried to get myself an Alex Caruso back. Do you know what I mean? And then I would have had somebody that was, a defensive, someone that when I'm looking at a matchup in the Western Conference against a Jamal Murray, who's a very tricky guard. He's, he's shifty. You get him, you're on him during this play towards the end and try and block that shot. He probably would have done it. He would have clamped him, most likely, in some capacity, but they didn't do that. So, but anyway, that's roster construction aside. Darvin Ham fired as the Lakers head coach. And it's very interesting. Let's get into a comment here. Big up to Super Nick. As always, remember to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. Thank you for stopping through, Super Nick. We appreciate the love. Now let's get into this next topic. Pat Riley's comments now. I'm going to play a quick video on this one.
For him to say that, I thought, is that Jimmy trolling? Or is that Jimmy serious? If you're not on the court playing against Boston or on the court playing against the New York Knicks, you should keep your mouth shut in your criticism of those teams.
So this is referring.
Did the video play for you?
Yeah, play for me.
Oh, right. I didn't even see it.
Did you not see it?
Yeah, it just showed me a black screen saying your browser failed, but it's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Right.
I got it.
Well, yeah, it played. I hope it played on the playback. I'll try and check it out. But so Pat Riley said this in response to a clip that came out by Jimmy Butler. He was in Miami for F1, and I guess he was backstage talking to somebody. I don't know who it was, and he basically said that if I was healthy, Boston would be at home, the Knicks would for sure be at home, and they would be on their way basically to winning or be back in the NBA finals or whatever. And this response from Pat Riley was basically that if you're not on the court, you gotta keep your mouth shut. And like that's very, and obviously there were some other comments as well made about Tyler Hero not being robust enough, being fragile. Sorry, that he's not. Obviously his injury problems over the last few years has really shown up. And he needs to be better in terms of being more robust and things of that nature. But in regards to what Pat Riley said, it seems this is Pat Riley just generally. He's like this, right? Like very direct and straightforward, old school basketball guy. So this shouldn't be surprising to anybody who's seen it. But in the situation that the Miami Heat are in right now, where there's been reports coming out that Jimmy wants a max contract to renew with the Miami Heat, teams are monitoring the situation, like his old team, Philly, looking to bring in, maybe potentially bring somebody in to pair with Maxey and Embiid, because they have their max cap space that they can utilize this offseason. So what's your thoughts on that? Because now because Miami Heat are at crossroads right now, because we've spoken about this in the previous streams where it's like, okay, do they bring another star in like they were intending to do last year with Dame, that didn't work out? Or do they just decide to just tear the roster apart and go young, but with Bam, the leader, Jovic, Jaime, and just try and figure it out from there? What's your thoughts on Pat Riley's comments for Jimmy Butler?
I think what those comments told me is that potentially there are rifts starting to form in that partnership. First and foremost between Star and front office, especially Pat Riley, because like you said, he's cut from a different cloth. Basketball back in the days, to win the NBA championship, it is commitment, and sometimes when you have guys like Pat Riley, they don't see joy in all of those fun in games, like when you're posted on social media or you're making little jabs in the media. You just need to play your game, and ultimately I think Miami have gotten away from that this season, especially in terms of underperforming the last couple of regular seasons. I know you can cite injuries and stuff like that, which Chino has on many occasions, but ultimately, Jimmy Butler got that injury, which kept him out for the entire playoffs, the rest of it. But ultimately, I think when you look at Tyler Hero, this was a young guy who the organization saw as untouchable. And right now, maybe they're starting to backpedal on that thought process. Maybe they're seeing Tyler Hero and they're saying, well, he hasn't produced the way we've wanted him to as a starter. He hasn't had growth in his game to the level where he can be a crucial contributor on this team. He can carry this team to victories in important scenarios like the playoffs. And on top of that, he hasn't been able to stay fit on a consistent level. Jimmy Butler, you can say that too, in terms of his fitness. I know he's led Miami to a couple NBA finals, hasn't really got the job done. But again, that's the key word, the key sentence in all of this. Hasn't got the job done. And I think for Miami, cool, we've been competing, we've been getting close here and there. We were able to get to conference finals, NBA finals. But the ultimate goal is to win a championship if you're a guy like Pat Riley. Now, I know a lot of Miami's fans, they've been throwing criticisms at him and a lot of the front office because they have failed to bring in guys that were complementary pieces alongside Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler. So you can say that on the other side as well. Those are things that kind of clash, and you have to work out who's in the right, who's in the wrong. Maybe it's both sets. But ultimately, for Miami, you mentioned Devin Booker in a crossroads. They're kind of the entire organization are kind of in a crossroads right now because Jimmy Butler, there were conversation about PG and the Clippers not coming to an agreement in terms of what PG wants to be paid and what the Clippers want to pay him. And now we're speaking about Jimmy Butler. You're getting older. You're not exactly as durable as they would like you to be as a number one guy, as a star in the regular season. Now those performances are taking a toll on the entire team. So what do you do? Where do you go from here? Is it going to be Jimmy Butler throwing little pieces of shade at the organization and the organization kind of standing firm and staying true to what they believe? Or are they going to give in to Jimmy Butler and say, cool, we'll pay you, but you have to keep up your end of the bargain? And I don't see Miami as one of those teams that will be held to ransom by any star. I mean, we've seen how protective they are over making those moves in the first place, given the fact that they've missed out on multiple big star players over the years and have just stuck with a group that Eric Spoelstra can try and maximize to the best of his abilities. So you never like to see this stuff ultimately. I think there's a lot of truth in what Pat Riley spoke, but you know, a lot of the things we forget sometimes with this Miami team when we praise them for reaching conference finals in these scenarios is that ultimately they shouldn't have been in those positions in the first place. When we think about them being in the play-in last year and then fighting all the way to get to the conference finals, that's great and all, but it's not going to put you any closer to winning.
Yep.
You're not making the job any easier for those guys that need even more help to get over that hump, which they ultimately haven't been able to do in this Jimmy Butler era. So I think there are big things that need to be done if you are within that Miami Heat organization. Whether you like it or not, changes need to be made. And maybe they need to be ruthless. I'm not going to suggest what kind of moves could be made. Jimmy Butler's future there in Miami. But big things need to happen and big things need to change, because one thing that is a given is you've got a young star in Bam Adebayo who is a great player on the defensive end, is a defensive player of the year candidate, no doubt about it. An NBA defensive team perennial candidate, and has the potential to be a really good offensive player as well. So you have that. And then it's about what you put around him and potentially Jimmy Butler if you want to continue moving forward in that direction.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. Like, I just feel like they need to break it apart. Like, it's done. Like, you've tried, and it's like they thought, like, their fans thought some of their team probably thought that they could potentially go on the same type of run as they did last year. And it's just like, you run into Boston in the first round, and of course, yeah, there's no Jimmy Butler, there's no Terry Rozier, but I don't think the outcome would have been the same. I think the Celtics would have won again, and it wouldn't have been an issue. You know, like, there'll be the odd Jimmy game, and some of their guys will be galvanized by it, but ultimately, I still think the Celtics would have beaten them. So, like, you look at it now after these 4 years or so that he's been there, it's been 2 NBA finals, but there's not been any silverware that's come out of it. They haven't got their championship ring. So you have to go in a different direction, because if you decide to go down the same route again, it's basically the definition of madness. Thinking that you're going to be able to do this again, maybe add another piece to it, and think that you're all of a sudden going to propel you into the conversation. It might do, because the East isn't the greatest, but what kind of moves are certain teams going to make? What are Philly going to do? What are New York going to do? What are Pacers going to do? They had a great year this year. What are the Bucks going to do? They need to bounce back. What's going to happen with Chicago? Are they going to make moves to be able to propel themselves into a conversation again? Because they need to. Atlanta breaking up. Are they going to go on their rebuild? How long does that rebuild take? Like, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that regard. What's going to happen with the Nets? New head coach, like, you know, they're trying to restructure things over there and they're trying to rebuild. So, you know, what's going to happen with Detroit? Detroit not even a bad side. Of course, this season was pretty bad, but look at their roster. They have some really good pieces. I think they're a lot better than what their record suggests. And what happens with them? Did they add in a few vets and then all of a sudden it boosts them as well? Like, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that regard. Pat Riley's comments. I think if you know Pat Riley, you know he is like this. What decision out of, because now I want to know what was the reaction of Jimmy Butler and his camp, his agent. What are they going to be doing to try and, you know, either try and resolve what's going on there? Have they taken the comments out of turn, or is it just they're regular? Or is he going to make a shift in his career direction and move to another team? Where and what team would that be? Who would want a Jimmy Butler at 35 now? You know, who we've seen in his career, he's unorthodox in terms of the way he motivates his other teammates. Maybe Miami was the best home for him at this point in his career, but it's just not worked out, unfortunately. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Let's get into some more of these comments before we move on. Big out to N, and he's saying, I'm hurt. Going out in 6 to the New York Knicks. And they look like they're about to get themselves into a conference finals, but some injuries. Some injuries. OG Anunoby is out with a hamstring injury tonight.
Brunson potentially a little hobbled too.
Yeah.
He went out the game, came back, and was able to deliver, but at what cost?
At what cost?
Josh Hart, was it 48-minute games in the playoffs?
You know, Tibbs running those boys into the ground. It's not looking nice. Tobias Harris going to turn Philly into 1975 Alabama. Yeah, no, it's a bit mad, you know. It's a bit mad. Big up to Moss as well, saying United week. I'm not watching the game. I didn't watch the game on Monday. I didn't watch Crystal Palace beat United 4-0. I wasn't watching. I didn't want to waste my time. I can't lie. I cannot lie. I didn't want to waste my time. If we take anything out of the game, it's typical United. They always raise their games for the top 6. But when it comes to the teams you have to beat, they're not interested. So, you know, it's pretty clear at this point. And even Jokic knew SGA was MVP. I think he was trying to say Canada.
Yeah.
We got rolled of an MVP. We're going to discuss that in a bit because it's a very interesting discussion. And people laugh when I said SGA should be MVP, but Jokic agreed. MVP about to get swept could never be us. Come on, OKC. And then doesn't think that Philly are going to do anything. You have to do something. I mean, one, you got to pay Maxi because you didn't give him the rookie max last year. So they got to do something with that. I don't think Paul George should go there, though, by the way. I think you got to you got to add some pieces to that roster and don't waste the opportunity to do so, especially with even more money coming into play, because I know for a fact that Tobias Harris does not earn a new contract with them. He's not renewing. He has to go. Okay, Canadian Thunder, let's go. Watching along tonight with the hockey, I believe it is. Dallas and Colorado, and then the NBA playoffs as well on Moss's channel. Said Brunson's a stud. OG was holding his hammy when he played great too. Why couldn't take it injured against us? Bro, you should have taken it to at least a game 7. You couldn't do that.
Embiid was trying his best to get a few of those guys out, man. He was trying his best. Mitchell Robinson, Jalen Brunson. Let's have a conversation about.
Mitchell Robinson's done. He's feeling the effects after after 2 games. He's done too. But yeah, it's crazy. Let's move on to the next topic right now. We'll talk about some of these end of season awards, man. So some announcements have been made. We got ourselves a Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and an MVP for the regular season. Rookie of the Year, Victor Wembanyama. Was it ever in doubt? You know, I don't think so. I feel like for someone who had a lot of hype coming into the league and, you know, people stating that he was going to be, you know, the best young player to enter the league since LeBron James. I think he's lived up to the hype, despite the fact that the San Antonio Spurs didn't have the best season. But you can see that he's got the potential of being one of the best players in this league. You know, for somebody so tall, but he's got a handle like a 6'2" point guard. You know, the fact that he's got the level of 3-point shooting, he's got this ability to block at the rim. And then there's obviously so much potential to his game too that is coming. So I think he's a well-deserved rookie of the year. But what's your thoughts? I thought the little touch from I don't know if you saw that video of by Fanatics. Where like he went into that room. I think it was like the kind of Hall of Fame type of room, and all the messages from all of the OGs in the league, the stars and the stars of present and past as well, like Vince Carter and Allen Iverson, LeBron and KD and stuff like that. So what's your thoughts on Victor Wembanyama's rookie year?
You basically said it, yo. Is it never in doubt? Brilliant performances. Obviously, San Antonio weren't able to get into the playoff positions. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of getting them into a competitive situation. But just speaking on Victor Wembanyama, the things he was able to achieve, his skill set, his development over the course of this season alone, I thought was really good. His development as a player, being able to get really acclimatized to that NBA environment and thrive in it as an individual. You know, he in his rookie year, he was considered for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah,
that's unprecedented to me, at least. That's a success offensively. When we're seeing some of the shots that he's been able to knock down and the confidence he's gained, not just inside but outside, behind the 3-point line, step back triples, pull up threes in transition from deep. Like, his skill set just in his rookie year alone is great. So imagine what it's going to be 2-3 years down the line when he's continuously trained with the best of the best coaches. He's got better players around him to maximize and open up areas of his game that may have been weaknesses initially. Like, there is so much growth to be done with Victor Wembanyama, and this is people kept on seeing it. This is the lowest level we'll see of him in his career. So if all goes well, we will see another jump next year. Hopefully we'll over the years we'll start to see a better team put around him and really understand what his potential can do, what his potential can bring to a really good team. So congrats to Victor, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year, to be honest with you. Defensive Player of the Year, though. This is an interesting one. Rudy Gobert wins his 4th title, which I think ties him with Hakeem Olajuwon, if I'm not mistaken, and somebody else, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know who the other person is, though. Let me...
Was it
I'm trying to see.
Detroit.
Oh yeah,
Ben Wallace.
Yeah,
Ben Wallace.
Yeah, Wallace too. That's interesting. And obviously a couple of end of season awards go to the Minnesota Timberwolves this year, with Naz Reid also picking up that 6th Man of the Year award. What do you think of Rudy Gobert's kind of resurgence as sorry. My bad. Sorry. As the defensive staple in the league once again? Like, you know, it seems as if he's come back on another level, especially with the Timberwolves obviously banking a lot on defense this year.
I think Rudy Gobert is a polarizing figure. From his years in Utah, where that team, they had great regular seasons with Quinn Snyder, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, of course, being the 2 key guys in that team. And they weren't really able to get it done. And his performances were flagged up significantly in the playoffs because of his inability to guard on the perimeter, just how much teams would abuse him in dragging him out into those perimeter situations where it looked like at the time he didn't want to engage in those scenarios. And time again, I mean, there weren't a lot of questions when it came to Utah being able to nullify those situations, and the other guys really allowing Rudy to do what he does best, and to stay away from those perimeter situations. They didn't make the adjustments to take him away from that and allow him to do his work down under, where he can rim protect and really alter a lot of drives to the rim. I think in Minnesota, we've seen his skill set improve. Now, this is a great offensive team, but we're seeing Rudy Gobert being more aggressive and being more confident when being asked to guard on the perimeter. Obviously, a great rim protector as always, just a leader, more of a leader. And those are, that comes with years of experience, being able to play the NBA game for as long as he has thus far. And to be in a situation now where, again, he is relied upon to be one of those leaders in a situation they traded him in a couple seasons ago now. And they've all wanted him to be a leader, to be a guy that can guide some of these young stars to make that jump and to elevate their games, which they evidently have this season in Minnesota. And we're seeing that as they go against the defending champs. They're 2-0. They won both games in Denver, so I think he's a polarizing figure. I do think he deserves those defensive player of the years, to just from being able to anchor those great regular season defenses. And the key is regular season defenses, because for some reason, as NBA fans, we always question a player's validity in winning an award after their playoff performances, which doesn't make sense because the NBA awards are regular season trophies. And maybe that's because for some reason the NBA have decided over the last, I don't know how long it's been now, maybe over the last decade or so, that they want to hand out these awards in the postseason.
Yeah.
Which to me doesn't make sense. I liked when the MVPs used to hold up these trophies and they used to celebrate with the crowd, and you'd really feel that energy before games. Yeah. Those were the type of awards I liked. But everything, especially when I don't know, we'll talk about the MVP in a second, right? So I'm gonna leave that conversation on the side. Yeah. But ultimately, I just think we need to stop judging certain players' performances over their postseason. Now, of course, when you think about a player's perception, of course, playoff performance is a big thing. But we need to remember these are regular season awards, and based off of performances in a regular season, sure, Rudy Gobert is a defensive player of the year, but also now he's carrying that over to the playoffs. Yeah. So when you put the award to the side and think of the player, we're thinking, okay, he's improved offensively. He can make plays a lot better than he did in Utah.
Yep.
He brings the intensity on defense, the leadership as a guy. that is one of the most senior players on the team. So I think he deserves the respect. Yep. Obviously, there were incidents that happened a few years ago that kind of made people clown him, but I think he's redeemed himself on the court, and I think once again he deserves respect ultimately.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Now, let me just read Chino's comments about Rudy Gobert, seeing as he's not here. He said that that Gobert defensive player of the year was not deserved, and you can see that in game 2 that they played, the Timberwolves played against the Denver Nuggets. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty interesting take. I feel like he has improved a lot, though. If I'm being totally honest, like Rudy Gobert, like just joining this Timberwolves side and kind of like revitalizing himself a little bit more. But yeah, it's pretty interesting from that perspective. I think if we're looking at it, he makes a good point, Chino, as well about Bam, right? Because he's saying that basically Miami is 5th with Bam on the floor and last with him off the floor. So, like, what about the impact of the player on the team? if Rudy Gobert wasn't a part of this Timberwolves side, would they have been a third seed, for example, at the end of the regular season? Who knows? Like, I feel like he does play a part in them having success in this regular season, and then obviously we're seeing it, like you said, carry over into the postseason. But you got to respect the fact that he's been able to just revitalize himself after it looked like him going to the Timberwolves was gonna go a lot left. A lot of people criticized, certain things too. So it's pretty interesting from that perspective. And now we'll move on to the MVP. And so we have a 3-time MVP, Nikola Jokic, winning the award for the regular season performances this year. But there seems to be a lot of, the narrative now shifting towards, did he actually deserve it? And was it Shea that deserved it? Because now we're starting to look into the criteria a bit more of how do we award the MVP? So if you look at Shea this year, he's helped lead a young OKC team to number 1 in the West, which they weren't expecting to. Well, I don't think a lot of people were expecting to. Maybe CM was expecting something quietly, but didn't say it to us and was trying to be humble. And he averaged 30 out of I think it was 50 games out of the 82 or so that he averaged 30 points or more, which is actually nuts when you consider like that level of scoring, right? I think he led the league, or he was at least top 3 in steals in the league, so he was getting it done on both ends of the floor. Then you look at Luka and the jump again he's made this year, another average of 30 or plus this year in scoring. Has improved defensively for sure. He's been able to make it work with Kyrie in that backcourt, which was a bit shaky when the trade happened. And they also were gotten themselves into a position where they're now in the conference semifinals, and obviously that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for the regular season, but he's performed once again to another high level, but ultimately he's fallen short. So, what's your thoughts on Jokic winning the MVP? And do you think that Shea potentially was snubbed here when maybe he should have taken the MVP, and we thought it was going in that direction anyway?
No, I think Nikola Jokic, hands down, is a phenomenal player. Best player in the league, especially for the last few years. And I'm not going to argue the fact that he won MVP, but I'm going to make an argument for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Luka Doncic, phenomenal year with Kyrie. They were able to put it together, but weren't exactly the most consistent team all season long. They were able to put it together in the end, but they weren't the most consistent team all season long. Same with the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets had a little lull period where a lot of people were questioning Nikola Jokic, questioning the motivation of the team overall. So even though they were one of the top 3 seeds in the West and they were able to put that together because of how great they are, they weren't the most consistent over the course of the entire season. Oklahoma City, for me, were consistent over the entire course of the season. And you can only say that really about a couple of teams in the league. Boston, OKC, I don't know if there's anybody else that you put in. Minnesota, I would say maybe 3 teams all season that were able to stay consistent and showcase who they are as a team all season long.
Yep.
But what makes OKC's jump so great to becoming the youngest number 1 seed in NBA history, to get out of the first round, but we'll put that to the side because it's a regular season award again. What made that jump so good is they were 500 last year. You add one piece in Chet Holmgren, he's been fantastic. He's made a massive difference. He has improved this team in many ways. But ultimately, you add a piece and you see multiple guys make that jump. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander has been a guy that for multiple seasons now, averaging 30 points per game, leading this team to victory after victory. One of the best offensive players in the game, one of the best offensive guards in the game today. Defensively, he brings it, and that becomes infectious. And of course, that is encouraged by the likes of guys like Lou Dort and co. but ultimately, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the number one guy, is a leader in one of the most successful seasons in Oklahoma City history, one of the youngest number one seed in NBA history, and they're backing it up now in the playoffs. It's not just a one and done. They are backing that up. They win game 1 against Dallas. So you can see it's legit now. And the one thing I don't like is when people
I think CM is gone. What's happened here? He's in the middle of that. I mean, we have to speak about this this MVP. Like, so Chino's comments was interesting surrounding this. So he said that Shea and Luka were robbed. Jokic is good, but it's lazy voting by the voters. I think Shea had a case, to be honest with you. I think Shea had a case, to be honest with you, for this MVP, because when you look at where, like, if we're talking about his impact on winning, he definitely was the leader in that team to help them win. Like, and for them to get the number one seed and be the youngest team to ever do it is like, surely that should be enough to put you where you need to be. Like, the bias that they've given to Denver might look to be a bit shaky now because of what's happening with Denver and the Timberwolves in this series. So it's like, whilst Jokic is a great player, like he was breaking records left, right, and center, especially last playoffs as well. Like, what he was doing was absolutely nuts. But I do think Shea definitely deserved it over all of them. And it's gonna be interesting to see the discourse for it over the next few days as we begin to settle into conference finals times, because I need to see Denver rise, and Jokic has definitely got to be a big part of that. So I don't know what's gonna happen with that. I don't know where CM is though. Maybe something's happened with the laptop or something, but we'll move on to the next topic right now. It's about playoff roundup, man. Like, we need to talk about some playoff roundup because it's very, very interesting. So we'll kick it off with the Timberwolves in the Denver series. Now, I was shocked, right? Watched game 1, and I was like, this Timberwolves side, this was on Saturday, that game 1, Timberwolves side came out of the blocks. Anthony Edwards, I think in the first half, I think he scored 25. See, what he came out hot. The fact that, that team, they're starting 5 and maybe let's go down to 6, 7 in their rotation. They're really good. I mean, yeah, they're really good. I think 6, 7 in their rotation, they're really good. Beyond that, difficult. Cat and Ant-Man, they have to be the guys playing the big minutes. Let me just hold on, people. Sorry, Wi-Fi shut down for CM, but he'll be back soon. I'm gonna just send him a message. But yeah, like, it was an aggressive performance from the off, and they really, really banked it on the defensive end. Like, to be honest with you, with some of the key things that was happening. Oh no, the Wi-Fi shagged you right in the middle of your sentence, and I moved on to another topic because I was like, let me move on. But you finish your point on what you were saying, and then we're gonna move into this Timberwolves and Denver series.
My bad, people. The Wi-Fi gods got me. All right, cool. So I think the thing I was about to say is, the thing I don't like is when online people are speaking about this narratives. Oh, they gave Jokic the MVP because he should have won it last year. So now Shea should have won it this year. So potentially he's gonna go get in next year. It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Are we not rewarding players for having the best possible season, guiding their teams to the best possible positions while being one of the biggest stars in that regular season? And for me, especially for what they were able to achieve in that final week of the season's final game, in achieving that first seed, unprecedented, nobody expected it. That is a good enough excuse alone, not even an excuse. That is a good enough example to present as to why Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should have been the league MVP.
Yep.
I'm not gonna question Nikola Jokic's greatness. I didn't like what Shaq did on the show when he was telling him to his face, I don't think you should have been the MVP. And that is part of the thing that I was speaking about earlier. When you have these guys on, and I love Inside the NBA, but they come on, the MVP is Nikola Jokic. Like, there's no excitement to that.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want to know what the awards are, but I think Adam Silver has a big job, like what he's done in the last few years. He has a big job in making those announcements a lot more important than they have been in the past few years. Because ultimately, when we have awkward situations like that on television, they will stand the test of time. And with the strength of social media, it will also start to form narratives around stars that the NBA don't want. Because ultimately, it's a business. They want to push their biggest stars and make their stars as noticeable, as big as possible within that stratosphere of sports. And you can't have stuff like that happening. Fair enough. A lot of people may have disagreed with Jokic getting his third MVP, but we're not going to question his greatness. And we're not going to try and embarrass him on TV, especially in a situation when he's coming on and his team's already 2 games down.
Yep.
and you're going to try and make him mad even more by having a scenario like that going on. So congratulations to Jokic, innit? I was just making my argument for Shea. I think it was a good enough argument for him to be an MVP in any given year, to be fair. I think with Michael Jordan and there was another player, guys that averaged 30 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists at least, and didn't win the league MVP. And Jordan did it on 2 occasions, and there was somebody else.
Yep.
But you know, it was a great achievement. It's a great season. Ultimately, look, OKC are in a position right now where they want to go in and fight for a championship. So are Denver. So we can move past it. But I just think Adam Silver overall has a big job to do to make those regular season awards, the meaning behind them definitive, first and foremost, and to make them matter more than they have in the last few years. Because I don't know about you, bro. I don't know about everybody else in the comments, but to me at least, I feel like the anticipation of finding out who's the league MVP, who's the defensive player of the year, the excitement for me has gone down a lot in recent years.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, bro. Like, I feel like having the opportunity to have the ceremony allows for, you know, the fans to get into it a bit more rather than them just kind of finding out on TV.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was saying before I moved on, basically, was that I think Shea, the impact that he's had on this OKC team, leading them in all aspects to be able to become the youngest number 1 seed in the Western Conference is something that is a remarkable achievement for such a young team. And obviously, Mark Daigneault obviously winning the Coach of the Year, and he's the leader of that in that aspect, and he's been able to take a young team which wasn't expected to be, you know, in contention for the playoffs in this manner. Why wouldn't the best player on that team also be rewarded the same way? I just don't understand that. But you know, it is what it is. But talking about Nikola Jokic, we're talking about his Denver Nuggets and the Timberwolves. That game 1, just recapping that a little bit. The Timberwolves came out aggressive. Anthony Edwards in the first half, I believe, racked up 26 points, right? That put them on a solid footing to get them through that game 1. Naz Reid with like an important contribution off the bench, which made it a very interesting first game. What are your thoughts on that first game? Like, were you surprised by the struggles that Denver were kind of under from the defensive pressure of the Timberwolves?
Yeah. You know what? After the first round, I wasn't surprised because I expected this series to be tight. And I asked a lot of questions of Denver on whether they were able to match the intensity of this Timberwolves team, who look like every time they step out on the court, they have a point to prove. And ultimately, I think they have a massive point to prove, having lost to Denver last year in the first round. So it's an interesting series. It's a shame that obviously there are injuries to Jamal Murray, but I think it even goes beyond that, because we've seen him be able to put on amazing performances against the Lakers in the second halves of games and win games for Denver. But ultimately, they're making life extremely tough for Jamal Murray. They're being very physical with him, not allowing him to get to his spots as easily. And that puts a lot of wear and tear on you. When you have great defenders who are going to pick you up full court, who are going to be bumping you, who are going to be doing the little things that get past the referee's eye, you get tired a lot quicker. I think we're seeing that at times with Nikola Jokic as well and other guys there. When you're taking your two stars out of their game and they have to work a little bit harder to get their offense going and to get other guys going, Michael Malone has to find a way to maximize them and really kind of do the same to what Minnesota are doing to them. Return that same level of energy. And I don't think they were able to do that over the first two games. Dropping both games at home, it's a big shock. It's a big disappointment. So now the next two for Denver are must wins. Yeah. Otherwise, this series could be over and they could be crashing out in the semifinals. Yeah. The Western Conference, which is, look, they're going up against a great team. But in any scenario, it's a massive disappointment for Denver, the reigning champions. So it's going to be interesting to see in Game 3 what adjustments Michael Malone makes to make the game easier and more open for the likes of Jamal Murray, for the likes of Nikola Jokic, and other guys to thrive again, to succeed. Because I think what the Minnesota Timberwolves are doing so great, which they did in the first round as well, is take away the strengths of the stars. When you think about Phoenix, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker struggled almost the entire series. Bradley Beal, all of those three stars had to work hard to get their offense going. And we're seeing that in the early stages of this series against Denver. So their intensity on the defensive end is allowing them to win games. And I'm not too sure if Denver were prepared for that, especially after their matchup with the Lakers, which may have given them, I would say, sorry, a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Based off of the way they were able to come back in scenarios where they didn't exactly start many games well. The Lakers got the better of them in all of the first halves in each of those 5 games. But ultimately, they were able to get back into it because of their championship acumen, because of the talent that they have on the floor. And really, the Lakers weren't able to put up a good enough defensive performance to slow down those guys on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
Minnesota have those guys. Yeah. And in Game 2, they didn't even have Rudy Gobert. Congratulations to him as his child. But they didn't even have Rudy Gobert in Game 2. And they were still able to replicate that level of effect throughout the entirety of that Denver team. So there are big questions to be asked now, because I'm looking at some of the performances for Denver. Michael Porter Jr., Game 2, 4 for 12 from the field. He was lights out in that Lakers series. Jokic, 13 shots. 13 shots for Jokic, 5 for 13, 16 points. Jamal Murray,
like 5 turnovers or something in the game or something like that.
Yeah, 4 turnovers for MPJ, for Jokic, and Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray was 3 for 18 from the field. 8 points. Aaron Gordon had the best performance for Denver. 20 points. Was the most efficient offensively in terms of looking at those guys. And Justin Holiday had a good performance off the bench, but ultimately they're going to need more. Especially when you've got 2 guys in Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns putting up 27 points on the other end. Then you got Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid off the bench giving you 14 apiece. So, man.
Now let's talk about Game 2. So Game 2, right? Denver held to 86 points in 80. The game. 80 points, which is the first time that they have been held to that in quite a long time. I don't know the stat off my head, but like when you look at that, you say to yourself, you saw the play, full court, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels on Jamal Murray, making it uncomfortable for him throughout the whole game, to the point where Jamal Murray loses his head. He throws a heat pack onto the court. Karl Anthony Towns narrowly misses it in terms of stepping into it and maybe slipping. Then he throws a towel at the referee. He's making gestures like this, like bribery is going on. Completely loses his head because he's out of his game. I don't really want to hear the excuses about injuries. Everybody's injured in the playoffs. This is where it is right now. Everybody's playing with injury. Some are playing and performing better than others. Some people's teams are deeper than others. So if you have injury or not, you have to play for it to see where you can take your team. Another thing that I don't like is Michael Malone. He was talking a lot after the win against the Lakers. Lakers daddy, you would. And on one hand, I'm like, okay, cool. You're celebrating. You've been here 8 years. You've achieved the ultimate goal of you being a head coach. But sometimes stay humble. Because when you're at the top of the crown, when you're on the top of the hill and you have the crown, everybody's gunning to take that crown off your head. And that's the mentality that you have to have if you want to repeat. That you're going to be the person at the top battling and making sure you smash everybody that's coming up that hill to try and take your crown. And this season, they definitely have not been that team, because they went from being a number 1 seed last year to being a number 2 seed. And it was an identical record really with the Timberwolves. I think it was a tiebreaker that got it for them to get that 2 seed. They look very sluggish, especially their start to the season was very sluggish. Like hangover for sure after that championship run. Obviously, it's the pinnacle of a lot of players' careers. So it's very difficult for a player to win a championship and want to go again for a repeat. We haven't had a repeat champion in the league for over 5 years. So it's like, it was obviously going to be difficult from that perspective. I didn't like the fact that Michael Malone wasn't staying humble and keeping his team humble, because now the situation they're in, being 2 down, having to go for 2 road games against the Timberwolves, where that their fans are going to be on a high because their team are unbeaten in 6 games in this playoffs. 6-0 is their record right now. You got a young star, Anthony Edwards, who is going to perform once again. All they need to do is have a few performances from some of their other key players and some production off the bench, and they could potentially go to a 3-0 win. And no team has been able to come back from 3-0 down in the playoffs. And like, for them to be the champions and be in that scenario could be a very shocking statistic. But we'll wait and see. I'm going to ask this question to you. When Jamal Murray threw that heat back, and then obviously we've seen like there's been replays and like there were tons of replays during that time. Referee obviously missed it. What should have been the appropriate action? Because now we know what's happened. He's been fined, but should he have been suspended? Because Chino said it, and I agree with him. He said it in the group chat. He said that Murray's he should have been suspended because he could have hurt someone. What do you think?
I agree. I also understand that. I understand the reason why he may have not been suspended is because, well, I'm not going to say the script, but I'm going to say, I'm going to look from the good of my heart and say they don't want to, suspending Jamal Murray at this point of the playoffs could be detrimental for Denver. He's one of their key guys, the number 2 guy with Jokic. When we think about their pick and roll, their partnership, it's a big part of how Denver have been able to succeed over these last few years of them growing together as a tandem. So I can look at it from that perspective. In terms of what he did, I think it is, and I'm trying to find the right word for it. You could say salty, you could say bitter, maybe immature. I think maybe immature is the perfect way to describe that moment, where you're throwing things at the referee, you're making these money signs. Ultimately, you have to do what you do best in order to win games. And if you look on the court, Minnesota are doing enough in order to get the best of the Denver Nuggets. So now it is up to you, Jamal Murray. It is up to you, Nikola Jokic, Michael Malone, KCP, all of those guys to match that intensity. And I'm not seeing that over the last 2 games. And you mentioned it, bro. We hear it all the time from players who have gone to try and do it. It's hard to repeat championships. It's hard when you go into that second season when you are the target and everybody is chasing you, going for the neck and trying to take you out, take you off the mountaintop. But ultimately, as a team with the position they're in right now, cool, you got past the first round, brilliant. But we also we should have seen the signs that potentially a team like Minnesota was going to give them a lot of issues based off of the way they performed in certain parts of that Lakers series and the regular season. And sometimes you can't just trust to turn, you can't trust a team to turn it on just like that. You need to build up levels of consistency. So, yes, there are injuries to deal with. Some guys hobbled, but ultimately, I think you need to keep all of that stuff away from your game and focus on what you need to do in order to get back into this series against Minnesota. Because you throw in heat packs at referees with players potentially slipping over that and getting injured, it only looks bad on you and the team and the organization, you know? And cool, we haven't seen these little incidents from Jamal Murray in the past or on a regular basis to where we can say like how a lot of people regard Draymond Green. Could that would that incident have been different? Think about what Draymond Green did to Sabonis. Different scenarios when he stamped on him last year. Different scenarios, I know, because you're engaging with a player there. Russell Westbrook this year in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Think about that scenario and how their excuse basically was we didn't want to suspend him. Why? Because it's the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you need to be better, Jamal Murray. Patrick Beverley, I know they got kicked out by the Pacers, but he got suspended for 4 games.
4 games, yeah.
So that will carry over to the regular season. But ultimately, you need to be better. And when you're winning, there's a lot of joy that comes with that. You can talk a lot.
Front runners.
Ultimately, yeah, front runners. And when you're losing, the talking kind of slows down a little bit. You know when a guy's talking loud, and then he gets embarrassed, and all of a sudden, his voice has gone in. He's not speaking with his chest anymore.
That was Michael Malone in the press conference, bro. He sounded very humbled, and it was like we gotta do our best to try and show. Like he was trying to get something out of his team, which I don't think is there. I just can't see them turning this around. If they get the win, great. It extends the series for a 5th game, but I don't think that they're going to be able to turn this around the way that they think they can, because I think that this could be a one and done season for them. No matter who, they've got the best player in the world, but that West is so competitive, and them boys are coming.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be difficult for them. But he should have been suspended for me. You have to set a precedent because that's never happened before. Where players throw usually players throw something off the court. They'll kick a bottle. They'll do something like that. But to throw something on the court of play that could have potentially injured somebody, you should have been suspended. You should have made an example of him. But there's a script. Adam Silver does not want to spoil his products, man. You have yourself a competitive West semis, and you're gonna get rid of one of the best players from the opposing team. It can't happen. Not for one game. Not like I understand Rudy Gobert, birth of your child. So you're gonna have to miss it. You gotta be with your wife. But for throwing a heat pack, I'm not suspending you. Take the heftiest fine that you can. You're not spoiling my products.
I think he got charged. What was it? 100K.
100K, yeah.
Hey, that's a hefty charge.
It's a hefty charge,
and that kind of gives us the insight as to potentially thinking, okay, maybe you did up this fine to say, listen, we could have taken you out of the series, so we're gonna slap you with the fine to say, count your lucky stars that you can still play and you can still bring, you have another chance.
You have another chance to try and save this product for me, because if you go down in a sweep, it's not looking good. Moss saying that the Timberwolves are playing some unreal ball for the last 2 months now. Jokic got him out of here. You can't talk him against them Serbia Mafia boys. Jamal, just a great Canadian boy from Kitchener. That's all. Let's move on to OKC and Mavs. Can the OKC Thunder continue their historic run? Currently 1-0 in the series. The game is tonight, isn't it? The second game in the series is tonight. Can they continue their historic run to these Western Conference Finals? It's looking like a dream season for OKC so far. What's your thoughts, bro, after that first game? And do you reckon the Mavs punch back tonight?
Well, I think for OKC, had a great game one. I'm expecting adjustments from the Mavs, but also the onus is on the stars to perform. We had a great season of 3-point shooting, and we delivered again. Multiple guys delivering from the 3-point line. When you look at Jaden Williams, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, who had a really good performance off the bench, 16 points, 3 or 4 from downtown. Chet Holmgren knocked down a couple. Lou Dort as usual. The interesting thing in this game is when we brought off Josh Giddey because he wasn't having a good shooting performance, we made the adjustments, and that's what really allowed us to cruise into this victory and win this game one, which has always been the conversation. When we were previewing this series, I said, if Josh Giddey is going to be shooting at the level he did against the Pelicans, great. But if he's not, then there are massive problems. And that is why trade talk, there was a little flirt with trade talk in the regular season before the trade deadline, because people were wondering, well, is Josh Giddey the perfect piece in this team? For all of his skills, shooting is a big deficiency, which in this offense, you need to be a great shooter to be out there, a good shooter, good enough shooter to be out on the floor in the crucial moments. Now, for Dallas, some things that I noticed, Luka Doncic, he's had a little bit of an injury. He's going to have to compete on the defensive end, or Dallas and Jason Kidd are going to have to find a way to hide him on the defensive end, which is probably going to be a lot more difficult than you can probably do, because OKC were looking to find him consistently in multiple possessions, and there were moments where certain guys were just gliding past him. It looked almost too easy to get past Luka Doncic and get to the bucket for a layup or to make a play. So he's going to have to bring it like he did in a couple of the games in that Clippers series. He didn't bring it in game one defensively. So the question is he fit enough to compete at a high level defensively for this Dallas team? Obviously, offensively, he needs to be better as well. 6 of 19, 31% from the field, 1 for 8 from 3. And that's another sign is, him taking a lot of step back triples, not really has it going, not really explosive enough to get inside and to make plays, get to the rim. So they'll need better performances from him and Kyrie Irving, who, even though he didn't have the worst game offensively, he can still raise the bar like we saw him do against the Clippers, where really he was probably the best player in that series, not just for Dallas, but across both teams. Multiple 30-plus point performances and just willing his team to victory. When I look at the rest of the team, obviously they're missing Maxi Kleber, who I think gave them really good contributions in the first round. So they're going to have to work their way around that. Derek Jones Jr., Daniel Gafford, and those guys, they're going to have to contribute too. But ultimately, I'm looking at those two stars and saying what they do in this series will be crucial to their success. And especially Luka Doncic, he's going to have to find a way to compete defensively. And at times in game one, it was way too easy for OKC guys to just breeze past him on defense and make a play. You can't allow that in game two. You just can't do that in the NBA playoffs if you want to go far in a series, if you want to win a series in the Western Conference especially. So Luka's going to have to find that consistency. He's going to have to dig deep. If he's injured, he's gonna have to dig deep, or Jason Kidd and the Mavericks are gonna have to find a game plan which kind of limits those OKC guys exposing Luka Doncic on that end of the floor, especially if he's banged up, to not be able to play consistently on that end on a possession after possession basis. So good win to start off the series. If you consider the first game where we didn't really have a great performance against the Pelicans and just were able to win that game, this was a much better performance. We were able to get away, really turn up in the clutch to secure that victory. We won both halves, and that's all you can ask from this team: shooting the ball well, defending well with a high level of intensity, as we saw throughout the regular season and against the Pelicans. So it's going to be interesting to see this game 2 tonight. What adjustments Jason Kidd makes, how the Mavericks are going to be able to play and try to slow down the likes of Jalen Williams, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Obviously, Lou Dort is a big part of our defense. How are they going to kind of frustrate him? Because we speak a lot about defenders being able to get up in the skin of great offensive players. But there are things that offensive players can do in terms of being smart, getting them into foul trouble, being efficient with the way you use the basketball, not really dribbling the ball for a high amount of seconds in a shot clock, keeping that ball moving, and also utilizing your skills as an off-ball threat offensively as well. So I think there are many adjustments Dallas can make just based off of the fact that when you look at Kyrie, he's an efficient off-ball guy. Yeah. Luka, even though we're not used to seeing him operate off-ball, his threat on offense alone can ask questions of defenses if he wants to operate as an off-ball guy, if he's fit enough to do so. So yeah, it's an interesting series. I think it's going to be really competitive, and I can't wait to see how game 2 goes.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think OKC very strong at home. So like having that home court advantage will allow them to protect it. I think Dallas, they're a bit hit and miss when you look at it and consider it. Really, like having to go to 6 with that Clippers team, where certain games they looked great, other games they were very poor, and it's like those inconsistencies were shown through the regular season too. By the way, they had a run that got them into the position that they're in, but facing off against against the number 1 seed, who have been in that position pretty much all year, it's going to be a difficult one for me. I think that OKC can continue this historic run that they're on. The young players, I think, is just I want to see how they're gonna face the adversities of being dragged into a situation that they haven't yet been in. I want to see what happens if they're 2-1 down in this series. Dallas come back with a couple of games, and then you're now 2-1 down, and like it could be like series on the line here for this game 4, for example. And then then what happens? You know what I'm saying? I want to see if they can turn that around. That's what I'm waiting for. But right now it's looking all good. I feel like a crucial battle across this is going to be Lou Dort and Luka Doncic. It's going to be a crucial battle for me just throughout the rest of this series, like, because I wonder because we've already seen Luka struggle against a defender that's really up against him. Terrence Mann in the previous series locked him down. Of course, eventually they were able to make an adjustment to try and get them out of the way. Then also it's about the commitment of the defending player too, because Terrence Mann wasn't as committed in that game 4 when you compare it to game 5, and then in game 6 as well, non-existent. Basically, it was a very difficult time for him. Lou Dort has been a lockdown defender for OKC this season, so it's like this battle is going to develop in ways that is going to be very interesting to see, and I wonder how Luke is going to be able to handle the assignment. But I think OKC can continue their historic run, but they're going to have to go through some adversity in this series in order to do it, to be honest with you. And that is probably going to be key to potentially them being in the Western Conference Finals. But let's move on. Knicks and Pacers. Series 2-0 to the Knicks after some heroics from Jalen Brunson last night. But it's coming at a cost. Tibbs has a short rotation. He really trusts only 7 guys in his rotation, and now it's even worse now with Mitchell Robinson out for injury. He's out for the rest of the playoffs now. He's out for the season. OG Anunoby has a hamstring injury. He's out for game 3, which is tomorrow night, which is also interesting. One of their top guys since coming in the trade deadline. And then Jalen Brunson injured his foot, had 15 minutes out of the game yesterday, only to return and end up scoring, I believe it was 42 yesterday. So, I mean, what do you think of the Knicks? Can they survive with this short rotation? Because by all means, now they have to go back to Indiana. Indiana strong at home. Their fans are going to bring it. They need to do better, Indiana. The likes of Halliburton and Miles Turner. But they've shown in the Bucks series that they can turn around a potential negative situation and turn it into a positive. They've been through a bit of adversity in this playoff so far.
Well, here's the thing, right? OG Anunoby's been a crucial part of New York's success. So him missing in game 3 is going to be a massive test for them. But the most interesting thing that I saw, especially in game 2, is that the Knicks have matched the energy of the Indiana Pacers in terms of being a fast-paced team, end-to-end, quick inbounds, getting on the other end of the floor, scoring on fast breaks, knocking down triples. And for me, if the Pacers want to win this series, the one disadvantage that they don't have over New York is the fact that New York can turn on their defense like that because they've got a team that get down low, they hustle, they play great defense, and they're a cohesive unit on that end of the floor. Whereas the Indiana Pacers, they may have shown it in a few sequences against the Bucks, but for the most part, we understand that they are not a good defensive team, and they have to heavily rely on their offense to be victorious. Tyrese Halliburton probably had the best offensive performance of his playoffs thus far with 34 points. That's a good sign for them, but they need Pascal to be better. They need a Miles Turner, who at times in the first round gave them 20 plus points, 29-point performance and so forth. They need him to do a little more, 3 of 11 from the field last time out. So they need their few guys to be better overall. Your Pascals, your Miles Turner. TJ McConnell, I think, has been their MVP in this playoff run off the bench. Really good contributions. Obi Toppin had 20 points off the bench as well against his former team. So they need to find a way to compete and to buy in defensively. And I don't know if as a team they have the ability to do that on a consistent basis. Whereas the New York Knicks, even with their deficiencies, have shown they've been able to compete. Dante DiVincenzo yesterday, 28 points. Great performance, 50% from 3, knocked down 6 of those. OG, 28 points from him. Josh Hart came through with some crucial points, played entire minutes. I think that was a stat that said he's averaging, 48 with 2 minutes in the playoffs over the last 5 playoff games. So you're getting great contributions. Isaiah Hartenstein, credit to him as well, because he stepped in the regular season when Mitchell Robinson has been missing, and now there's going to be so much more asked from him. I know Precious Achiuwa has played some of those minutes as well. He's been brought into the rotation. But, there's going to be a lot asked of this New York team. And for me, I think this is make or break for the Pacers, because they have a great opportunity now to see if they can get back into this series after going 2 games down. You've got guys missing. Jalen Brunson potentially not fully fit, even though we saw him dig deep and deliver a great performance when he came back out of the locker room. They're going to have to take advantage of that stuff, and it all starts on the defensive end. Because New York will match your energy. They showed it. They can do that over the course of a 48-minute game. But how are you going to find other ways to compete? It's by defending. It's by getting your stars to perform better, of course. But you need to defend if you want to go far. And they were able to get past the Bucks just about. But now you're going up against a different beast who are here to compete. They have a point to prove. especially with all of these guys missing. They want to showcase, other guys want to step up and they want to showcase that they are good enough to be in this rotation. So I'm looking at Indiana. I'm saying, if you're made for the playoffs, now is your time to show up. Going back home, show me what you have in the locker. Show me what you have. Because Tyrese, we need to see some consistency from you now. Pascal, we need to see it from you. Miles Turner, we need to see it from you. And all the other guys that have been contributing. But defensively, if you want to make it far, if you want to shock the world and go to the conference finals and get back in this series alone, you need to showcase the tendencies at which a successful team needs to win.
I'm going to say something, right, which is interesting. So the fact that the Knicks are trying to match the pace of the Pacers, didn't want to say that, but, this is the only way I can say it.
Yeah.
That, I think, has contributed to some of these injuries because they haven't played that way all year, right? Whereas the Pacers have. The Pacers have been a team that they'll get out and run. They're going to shoot threes. You know what kind of energy they're going to have in the games. Now, of course, making that adjustment to your game plan to make sure that you match that is obviously the right thing to do. But when you have a rotation that's short and you've played guys for long stretches of minutes, like OG has got himself a hamstring injury after going for a full tilt sprint after a ball because he's been in he's played the most minutes in a 6-game span over the last 6 games, right, in his whole career. So it tells me that, one, there's no trust by Tibbs in his roster beyond the 6th, 7th man. And 2, the players have gotten to the point where their bodies are now beginning to break down because of the rigors of this postseason. That was a tough and grueling series against Philly. 6 games. Difficult. You've got yourself an MVP in Joel Embiid at the time, who was trying his hardest to get his team into a 7th game. Tyrese Maxey doing what he was doing, all because of the fact that they couldn't get more from one of their guys in their team. In the Tobias Harris, for example, is the reason why they've ended up out and the Knicks in the 2nd round. The Pacers, I think, have an opportunity to get themselves back on track in this series with this home game tomorrow, because I feel like they're strong at home and they've been able to showcase that in the series against the Bucks, that they're willing to take on any challenge. Of course, caveat, even though Dame was there for most of it, Chris Middleton stepped up massively. There was performances so they were able to even weather that storm, and I think that the Pacers will get themselves back in here. I worry about what's going to happen in this series because, yeah, maybe New York Knicks come through it and get to the Eastern Conference Finals. But what shape are OG and Brunson going to be in to get there? Because with those 2 players not at their best, this team will not get to where they think they can get to. But, I look at the hamstring injury for OG. Hamstring injuries are not easy to heal. He needs rest right now.
That could keep you out for a few weeks.
And now we're in the cadence of a game every other day. It's a game every other day, and he's not going to have enough time to rest unless they somehow miraculously sweep. Then he gets 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? Or roughly 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? But I don't think it's going to happen. I think this game extends to a 5th. Series extends to a 5th game at the very least. So I mean, Tibbs needs to do more to trust his rotation. He needs to go deep in there. He needs to trust Precious Achiuwa, which he's going to have to now with Mitchell Robinson out now, right? Deuce McBride's going to have to get more minutes. I think in that first round he was doing what he was doing, but he's not shooting at the same rate in this series. There needs to be more. That's got to happen, but I don't know if Tibbs is going to be able to do that.
I mean, it's tough on them. Sorry to interrupt, bro. It's tough on them already when you think Bogdanovic is down, Randall's down, Mitchell Robinson's down, now OG's down. That's 4 crucial pieces, 3 starters, and a guy to come off the bench in Bojan Bogdanovic, who's a great contributor. And then when you look at the rest of the guys that's there, I mean, Shake Milton, he's a guy who a few years ago in Philadelphia, a forgotten guy. Maybe you can get something out of him, and motivate him to perform and to prove why Philadelphia saw something in him once in a while before the resurgence or the rise of Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, I don't know if there are guys you can bring into that rotation and say, boom, cool, Miles McBride, he only played 20 minutes in game 1. He's shown that he can shoot the ball well. He can provide those energy moments. He's a fan favorite already in New York. So let's see what he can do. Precious Achua, like you said, Alec Burke is another guy who, he's a vet. And he's gonna have to be relied upon now. So the deeper you go in the rotation is the less expectations you usually have. But now they need those contributions desperately with the amount of injuries they have to key guys. So you know what? It's an interesting point you brought up when you said playing at that pace isn't potentially not healthy to this Knicks team. And you look at it, you may not be wrong.
I mean, we'll end it off with what Chino said in the chat. He was like, Tibbs is a war criminal. New York will survive this round, but they won't survive Boston. They'll be burnt out. Which is a sentiment I can agree with. I'll be humble and I'll say, let us get there first. Then we can worry about who's coming to join us. Right? But based on what he's saying is right. Like, you just look at the amount of minutes that all these guys have played. They're starters. Like, they're playing too many minutes. He's not trusting his rotation enough. That's obviously a problem with the roster construction, and you can go into that and how they can improve that next year. But for this playoff run, with the way the Pacers are playing, like, are they going to be able to match this over the next 2 games at least in their home ground? I'm not in their home arena. I'm not so sure. I don't think they can with the injuries and the recovery time and all of this. There's not enough recovery time, so it's like, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But let's move on to the last topic. We won't spend too long here. You know how it goes with the Celtics. I told everybody already. I expect a championship. We've taken a 1-0 series. That game when it started, it felt like a regular season game. By the way, the playoff atmosphere was not there in TD Garden at all, right? Which I find strange, but it's kind of like Celtics fans are already looking at bypassing this series and going straight to the conference finals. Maybe some of them already looking at the NBA finals. So very interesting. We look at the danger of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland as a tandem. They're shifty guards, so they have the ability to be able to get their offense going. But ultimately, the Celtics doing what they do best, moving the ball, finding the open man, and knocking down the 3 ball. JB Bickerstaff before the game said that they need to win the 3-point battle. They need to reduce the amount of threes that Boston are taking. If they take less than 40 threes, based on the numbers and the statistics in the season, then you have a chance in the game. If you can't take that away from them, then you're most likely not going to beat them. And it kind of held true. The Celtics had 43 3-point attempts, knocking down a good majority of them again to kind of end the game with a 25 point win. So when I'm looking at it, it's pretty interesting. That from the other side, the Cavs coming off of the back of a game 7 against Orlando are high, kind of coming over that hump that they fell short last season in the first round. I wasn't expecting too much from them. Donovan Mitchell was always going to get his, but you needed a lot of production from other players like a Max Strus, from an Isaac Okoro, who was kind of hot from 3 in the first quarter, 3 from 3. Darius Garland needed to step up massively. I didn't really see that. And then obviously them going deep into their rotation and bringing in Marcus Morris and Tristan Thompson, it kind of makes you look at it and it's like, these guys are supposed to be out the league type of thing, but they're here playing in this game. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. It's kind of brought a conversation forward about Jason Tatum. Why is he not killing it like Ant is? Why is he not killing it like Luka is in this playoffs? And then you're seeing, if you go deeper into it, he's getting double teamed, triple teamed at times. And the one thing that Jason Tatum has been saying this whole playoffs is we have to keep playing the right way. That's the key for us to win. And it looks as if they're playing the right way. Joe Mazzulla has made statements where he's saying we have to do the same things that we've done in the regular season and translate them into the playoffs. That plan cannot deviate. So we're doing exactly the same things and the same results are yielding. So my question to you, to the people in the chat, is Jason Tatum's statistics in terms of scoring indicating a shooting slump, or is he playing like a true two-way player is supposed to play?
I think for Jason Tatum, in the past, the things that have hindered him perhaps is his persistence to shoot the ball, to take and make difficult shots. Now in game 1, 0 for 5 from 3, he didn't have it going from there, but he has other facets of his game where he can get into the mid-range. He can work it in the post, get to the rim. But like you said, the thing that you like to see from Jason Tatum is the growth of his game overall, making the right play, understanding that when you get double teamed, you have to release the ball quickly in order to find the open man and take advantage of that extra spot that is suddenly open on the court. And, other guys have stepped up. When you look at Jaylen Brown, I think he's their leading scorer, but points per game at least in the playoffs. And then, Derek White, who I think has done a superb job scoring the basketball, had 25 points in game 1. Drew Holiday is another guy that can step up for them and so forth. So I think they have a team where you can afford to pass the basketball and play a brand of basketball where you are moving the ball around because you have multiple scorers on the court. I mean, you guys are missing out on Kristaps Porzingis through injury, but even then, you still have Jaylen Brown. You have Peyton Pritchard off the bench. You have Derek White. You have Drew Holiday. Multiple guys that can score the ball. Sam Hauser off the bench. Multiple guys that can score the basketball on any given day all over the floor. One of the best three-point shooting teams in the league for a reason. So, to me, Jason Tatum will need to step up in the moments where he is needed. I don't think in the first series it was needed so much so against Miami to have that signature performance. Maybe in this series we might have a reason to. I don't think so because, quite frankly, I don't like the Cleveland Cavaliers' chances of taking it to the Boston Celtics, where to a situation where this series goes to 6-7 games. I don't like the Cleveland Cavaliers as a team in order to be competitive against this Boston Celtics side. So we'll have to see how they do tonight. But when it's time for Jason Tatum to step up, I know he will. I've seen him have signature games. Last year, what was it, 50 points in a closeout game? He has it in him. So for me, I'm not questioning his acumen as a guy that can step up when the moment's needed. Where he shines brightest in those scenarios. And I think we will see that from Jason Tatum in the latter stages, maybe of this series and onwards. But I just like the way Boston are playing because during the regular season on this show, we've questioned Boston's ways of playing when they get into clutch moments, when it's close games and they need to see it out. Their killer instinct and mentality. Sometimes they take the foot off the gas. No, now is not the time for that. I think they want to build a level of consistency in the playoffs, which makes them a threat at any time of games so that they can kill off teams and kill off situations, kill off series as quick as possible so they have an optimum amount of rest to go into the latter stages of the playoffs and compete for a championship, which has to be the goal for this roster.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't understand how the narrative has changed from, okay, like we're winning and we're doing the thing that everybody is expecting us to do, but then Jason Tatum's not killing or he's not scoring this and he's not doing this, so it must be a problem. We have to make it a problem. A two-way player is someone that well, I think one thing I'll say is maturity from him is, you know, making the right choices in the games and allowing the game to come to him as opposed to chasing something that's not there. That's something that has been the struggle of the Boston Celtics teams, where both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have gone gone looking for things in a game that's never there. And whilst, because they're talented, they can put up great numbers in the stat sheet, it doesn't actually help the team. And we've seen it on occasions, many times, like over these last few years, right? And I feel like now they have gotten to a point where they've matured, both of them. They've now gotten to a point where they're exercising their leadership, right? And and now they know what their roles are, especially in certain games, and they know when they pick their moments when it's required, right? So for JT, it's like he knows everybody's gonna try and come for me because I'm the best player on the best team. So as soon as I got the ball, I'm already gonna have one person on me, 1v1. Someone's gonna come in for the help. And then even a third person potentially could come in just to block the passing lane. So I have to get rid of the ball quickly. For JB, it's like be aggressive from the beginning, set the tone for the team. So first quarter, it was like this or the whole regular season. First quarter is JB's quarter. He always sets the tone. He goes out, he runs, he drives into the paint. If it's not going for the dunk, it's going for the layup. If it's not, he's gonna post and then mid-range with the fadeaway. Like, and they know their roles and they know what they're doing. Now, when the moments come and there's space on the court and you're getting open looks, you take them. And if that means that, and then if you're taking them and you're knocking them down, then it's going to start to build up a little bit more. You get into a rhythm. That's when you know, okay, it's my time. I'm in rhythm. I'm open as well, based on the way we're playing. But then at the same time, it's also sacrifice. And this is the key thing for the Celtics in this. We got such a talented starting five. All of them can get into double figures if they need to on any given night. So it's like nobody needs to go out there and go and get 40. Like a Jalen Brunson or sometimes a Luka or even an Ant. No one needs to go out there and go and get 40. If it happens, let's hope that it's not at the detriment to other players who are having a great night and it means we're losing the game. You don't want that. So I think for me, JT is playing like a two-way player supposed to, because when he's not knocking down shots, he didn't have the greatest shooting nights in game one, but 11 rebounds, 5 assists, I think 1 or 2 blocks. Like, so he's doing things on the other end of the floor. And that's the key part of his maturity that I've liked over the last 2 years, where when things aren't going for him on the offensive end, he still continues to play the game the right way on the defensive end. And obviously that helps the team even more anyway. I've been seeing him crashing boards for the last 4 years. Like, he's active on those boards. He wants to grab that board off that board and keep the moves going in transition. So I'm happy with what I'm seeing from him so far. We don't really need him, and we're seeing Derek White going off. He's like putting himself up into the Klay Thompson and Steph Curry in terms of the free ball. I think he's hit 26 so far in the playoffs from free. So, and that's going to continue, especially if he's going to get open looks and if he's got time to set his feet and all of that. So, I'm waiting patiently for game 2. It's about to begin. We'll see if we can get the second game and then go on the road and try and close this out on the Monday if we can. But it should be interesting still. Right. So we're going to end the show here, but I've got a big announcement to make, right? So there's a partnership coming into play between Pros Only Sports and the platform Playback. So we'll be able to watch NBA games live. And when I say live, I mean we actually won't be subject to any copyright or anything, because Playback have a partnership with the NBA. So maybe tomorrow, most likely Saturday, will be the first stream. So if you guys are here, I will make the announcement on the community tab on the Pros Only Sports channel. I'll also do it on Twitter as well. Just come through, sign up to Playback, we can actually watch the live games together, which is actually really exciting. Like, I was actually really excited to know that we can actually watch the games and won't be subject to any copyright because Playback are partnered with the NBA. So I will announce it properly, but I just wanted to just kind of give a heads up to people because there's a potential as well for some 20 VIPs to be a part of the Playback room that we've got, and you will actually have access to the NBA League Pass or be able to watch the game for free. So there's 20 league passes available for the VIPs as well to the channel. So stay tuned for that. But I just wanted to make that quick announcement as we head into the weekend. But we're gonna end the show right there. I want to say big up to my guy CM once again for holding it down another couple of hours. I know this is a lot to talk about, but you know it's about the hoops right now. We're doing it for the love of the hoops right now. So thank you, bro. I appreciate it once again. Big up to man like Chino as well, out with the family right now. I know he's enjoying his little family time right now. So you know, big up to him. He'll be back on here regularly once again when he returns from the islands and all of that. CM, before we get out of it, though, let people know where they can find you, what you're doing this weekend, and all of that type of stuff.
Yes, people, you can find me at CM22ENT over on YouTube. Kind of just thinking about a way I can reshape my content going into next season and to end this year on a high. So football, Man United content, speaking all Man United talk over there and cm22ent.co.uk, weekly articles, match reports and stuff like that. It's kind of a hub of all of the content that I make. So go find me over there. Big ups to Roland and Chino, everybody inside supporting the show. Make sure you're subscribing on Pros Only Sports and look out for the Playback link, people, because that's big stuff. Being able to watch the NBA with everybody else that's in here and to interact as well. I think that's a really good move, man.
Yeah. Thank you, bro. But yeah, we'll be back potentially this weekend, maybe streaming one of the games that's going to be on. I need to sort out a couple of things with the Playback stuff, just test it a little bit. But yeah, stay tuned for that. Announcement will probably be tomorrow on the socials and the community tab, so stay tuned for that as well. And yeah, maybe have a chance to get one of them VIP passes. So make sure you, when that announcement's there, make sure you're locked in and maybe share it out with some friends who may be interested in that too. We'll be back next week to review a little bit more because we might be in a situation where there's some sweeps, some teams in the conference finals. We don't know, but let's see. Let's see. Big up to everybody. Make sure you're hitting the like button, subscribe button as well if you're new, notification bell, all that good stuff. Follow the socials and all of that. We're out, people. Peace.